And if you just joined us, you've picked a fantastic Sunday to be here. Our young people will be serving. Sam and I will share the message. And they're even going to be making you coffee drinks in the cafe on the way out. So good luck with that if you're going to have a cafe drink. But we are going to jump into the message. We are in the second to last week of our series called What If Everyone Just Did What Was Right in Their Own Eyes? And we're studying the book of Judges. And we get to kind of a bit of a funky turn here in the book of Judges for the last few chapters. Our key text for this week is chapter 17 and 18. And if you were reading with us this week in our daily devotional, you would have been reminded that these last few chapters of Judges actually don't detail the story of a leader, of a judge of the nation, but they give us insight into the lives of the people who were living in the nation at the time and demonstrating just how far people had really embraced this idea that they were doing what was right in their own eyes. And this is where we get this language. Let's look at Judges 17:6. In those days, Israel had no king, and the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes. And the writer of Judges is giving us this perspective. Not only did the people not have a physical king that was giving them direction, but even God had intended himself to be king over the people and give them direction and rulership. And they've just rejected God's ways, God's laws, God's principles for their lives. And this is what we're going to see in these last few chapters of Judges. And in case you didn't read the story with us, I'm going to give you a quick synopsis because we can't cover 2 chapters of the Bible in 30 minutes. So I'm going to give you a quick overview in case you haven't read it. Go back and read it this week for yourself. But it's the story of Micah. And Micah is living in communal home, so his mom's there, and he steals 1,100 pieces of silver from his mom. This is like a Mother's Day message. We should be preaching this when kids steal from their parents. No, but he steals 1,100 pieces of silver from his mom. So without knowing it, his mom pronounces a curse over whomever stole the silver. Micah overhears this curse and says, I don't want this curse to land on me. So he goes and he confesses. He goes, Mom, you've just cursed me. I don't think we're in a good space here. So then she walks back her curse and then she pronounces a blessing over this stolen, I'm going to say gold, this stolen silver. And they determine they're going to make an idol out of this stolen silver. So she makes the idol and Micah sets up a shrine. And then Micah entices a Levite who was supposed to be set aside to offer worship on behalf of the people of Israel for Israel. He entices a Levite to come and provide customized spiritual leadership for Micah and his home. And this story is messed up in so many ways that you've got stolen property being fashioned into an idol. The idol is supposed to worship Jehovah God. They're not worshiping the idol as some other God. They're going, this is my representation of God. Breaks the second commandment, saying they were not supposed to have any graven images. The Levite breaks his purpose. He was supposed to be set aside to offer worship for all of the people, not just for one person. And they've got their own little home worship system that's been set up, that's easy, that's personal. So today in this story, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how do we do that in our lives today? And what do we learn from Micah's life where we can get so far twisted into, I want worship to be personal. I want it to be customized so that it's going to fit me for my personality and my style, and how that actually deviates from what God intended worship to be. So we're going to study the topic of personalized religion. Now, religion is not the only thing that we personalize in our lives, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's no surprise that we are in an age where everything must be personalized. Everything needs to be catered to us as an individual. And so we recently did a poll on social media, on Instagram, where we wanted people to choose this or that. It was personalized versus basic. And the first one is just coming up. It was custom designed shoes that match every outfit, or mismatched socks. And let's see the results of what came up from our...
It's 50-50, which I am shocked by. How many of you have mismatched socks on today? Anyone? A few people? No one? No one's admitting it anyway. Well, 50% of you do. All right, you go.
Honestly, it makes me happy that there's no mismatched socks. There's a certain ick to not wearing the same...
You're matching. I like it.
I mean, trying to Okay, second one was an elaborate Starbucks order or just a plain coffee. Let's see what the audience said. Oh,
That is
close one as
50-50.
well.
Okay, let's do a quick survey in the room. How many of you have a big elaborate Starbucks order? Hands up. Okay, how many
I
are
see some
just
hands.
coffee? You just go into your store.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay,
Yeah.
so the internet is lying to us. In the room, we see.
Yeah, you can never go wrong with a double, triple, quadruple, quadruple. You know, the only time I'll go to Starbucks is just to get the cup. You know, give me that venti water with a side of water and a shot of water, no ice. So, and our last one we can see here: handwritten, heartfelt letter versus generic greeting card. Let's see how that turned out.
Oh.
There's hope for humanity. Yeah, who doesn't love a good heartfelt letter, eh? I'll tell you who, me. No, I'm just playing. No, it really shows the intentionality. And so, you know, we did this poll as we look at what our culture is today, and there's no surprise that in our culture, everything has been tailored for personalization. You know, in the later part of my childhood, we had Build-A-Bear workshops.
Yes.
Has anybody ever been to a Build-A-Bear? Are
Bear.
those even still around? I don't even know. If you wanted to customize something and personalize something, you would customize a stuffed bear. However, those days are way past us. Our culture isn't so concerned about building a bear as they are building a religion best suited for their needs. Even our modern day faith system is structured like that of a grocery store. We pick and choose what it is that we need in the moment. And if we forget something, we can always go back and grab it later. Everything is meant to grab your attention, our attention, to be enticing, to be appetizing, to draw us in. Why have vegetables when you can have Oreos?
I ate my broccoli yesterday. I was good.
We as people are even considered, you know, a valuable entity, a commodity for digital platforms and cultural industry corporations. You know, the personalization of culture and information can be driven by digital platforms to maximize their profits. You take Facebook, for example. Users are categorized into several segments to be sold to advertisers. You know, this personalization helps Facebook organize according to their specific features, such as age, gender, ethnicity, preferences. I'm pretty sure most of us have been on Netflix. If you think about the Netflix model, users are able to be categorized by their tastes so that Netflix recommends similar cultural content to individual users. Long gone are the days when you tune in at a certain hour to watch cartoons or a movie you've been waiting to watch that only shows up at a certain time. Hey, trust me, I lived in Cuba. You know, cartoons ran from 5 to 7 and then you call it. So I get that. You know, our culture embraces and tells us that this is the way it should be. This need for personalization. And I was running through some statistics on just the consumer culture, and I came up around a study conducted in 2017, and this is what it said about the personalization. It said 35 of consumers are willing to pay for personalization. And one of the statements that stood out to me was, personalized products and experiences make consumers feel unique in the sea of sameness. Now, this is a bit contradictory because if you think about, you know, the new iPhone coming out, everybody wants it, the new AirPods, whatever it is, we want to be unique. We want to be different from other people. The other stat that was surprising to me was 50% of millennials and Gen Zs express a desire for personalized products. Like I said before, our youth are catered to in a way that wants them to, their overarching goal to be personalization. Everything needs to be tailored to me. And the last one was the value of the personalized gift market was expected to reach $31 billion by 2021, up 55% from 2016. That just tells you how much goes into the industry, how much people are wanting to be personalized, are wanting to be different, mix and match all of these things. And here's the thing. The Christian faith is a system of saving truth, not a catalog of options. You know, when we look at the Bible, there are clear mandates that we're called to live, and it's not like we borrow from here and there, and I don't like this verse, I don't like that passage. It's very clear what it says in the Bible and who we are to pursue.
So when we come to religion, we need to understand that our faith can't model culture, right? So let's look at 3 thoughts of what we do with our personalized religions. The first problem with this is that personalized religion is self-serving. And if you're new with us, all of our notes and scriptures, you got to download the Portico app. They're all there for you. But personalized religion becomes self-serving. And the kind of spiritual life that the Bible teaches is very rarely individualized. There's an overemphasis in our culture about, well, I come to faith and I have a rhythm that fits well in my lifestyle. Me are the words that we use because those are words that are familiar with our culture. However, God established Israel in community, that we would come together to worship and we would offer collective sacrifice of worship. It's the expression of the group. Yes, there's personal participation in worship. However, it's not expressed in a vacuum. When we understand worship, we have to understand that we are reliant on other people for our expression of worship to God. And one of the first signs that we should have that is putting off warning flags that we're going the wrong way is when we start to say, that's not meeting my need in worship. Who's worship about? Worship's about God. So if we're saying it's not meeting my need, we better start to have a warning flag and go, oh, what am I starting to have a conversation about here? So if you have Judges 17 open, this is Micah. So Micah is going to fashion the idol. He returned the money to her. So Micah returns the money to his mom, and he said, I dedicate these silver coins to the Lord. In honor of my son, I will have an image carved and an idol cast, Micah's mom is going to say. This culture, this is a little bit different culture than our culture, but in Hebrew culture, or in Israelite culture, they had normalized idol worship. Now, they didn't actually believe that those silver coins that they were putting together in some kind of shape, they didn't think, well, now that's God. They said, this is going to represent God for me. Now, why did they do that? Because when you're worshiping a God that you can't see, and you have to do it in a collective way, you have to travel somewhere, and you don't have anything that's a tangible representation to you, it's kind of difficult. But if you could have a God representation right in your home, sitting on a living room table, and then you could come and worship whenever you wanted at your own convenience with your own expression, that becomes easier. That becomes more convenient. That becomes self-serving. And this is the challenge. This is something so it's not new just to our culture. If we can do it in a way that works for us better, we have this draw that kind of brings us that way. So when we start to question, is the practice of worship difficult or is it more convenient? We're not asking the right question. It's a dangerous question to be asking. And this desire, we're seeing it definitely in our day and age. And we've got this new expression of online worship and online community. Let's say hello and thank all of our online worshipers here today. Hey, online, thanks for being with us. What I'm definitely not saying that we think that online worship and online ministry is not a godly way. We would not be doing that if we truly believe that. But here's what we believe. If we are participating in a church online, or if we're saying, you know what, I'm going to watch this community one Sunday and I'm going to go to this community one Sunday, and I'm just going to do whatever feeds what's good for me and feels good for me, this is where we're in error. Where what's true worship is, I'm a part of a community that collectively we sacrifice together and we worship together for God's purposes, not for our own purposes. And we can justify a lot of things in our minds and say, no, this should be easy, this should be comfortable. But if we're not careful, then we're going to be designing a worship experience that meets our personal desire more than meets God's standard for what worship is. And what worship is a communal sacrifice of God's people, not a personalized experience. So if and when we're participating in something that's easier, or that's customized for us, it should be on top of the communal corporate worship sacrifice. It shouldn't be the thing that becomes our foundation.
Exactly. And just as we see this continuation from Judges 17:3, we see that the mom had offered these coins to honor the Lord, and he made these idols. And so we read in Judges 17:5, and it says this: Micah set up a shrine for the idol, and he made a sacred ephod and some household idols. Then he installed one of his sons as his personal priest. There's a word to describe what is going on in this verse, and that's syncretism. Syncretism is the idea of taking the pieces of everything that makes sense to us from different religions or worship or different gods and making that our way of worshiping God. Micah was interested in making this new thing, this new religion, different and yet the same. The ephod, a type of apron worn by Jewish high priests, was an integral part of being ceremonially ready to serve God in the Old Testament. And the priests were equally as important as they helped officiate at many offerings under the law of Moses. So you see, Micah knew some of the focal points of worshiping God, so he kept them the same. And yet he installed shrines, he installed idols, borrowing from the neighboring religious practices, something that, as Pastor Rick said, was against the first and second commandment. And much of the Old Testament recounts the struggle between faith in Yahweh versus pagan deities, as we see here in the book of Judges. The prophets repeatedly called the people back to the worship of the one true God. In the New Testament, we see this as well. Paul rejected the baptism for the dead in 1 Corinthians 15, a practice brought into the new church by converts. As we take a look at the religions that are in our world, we look at the most prominent ones. We look at Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity. We see that there's many commonalities between all of these. In Islam, they offer 5 prayers to Allah. In Buddhism, they attend a temple to worship the different deities. In Judaism, they have something called the Sabbath, which runs between Friday and Saturday evenings. In Hinduism, although they have no formal ways of worship, they still worship in the morning or evening in their homes or in their temples. So when we look at these practices, they look very similar to some of the things that we do as Christ followers on a regular basis. So what is it that distinguishes us from these religions? Well, it's God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. You see, without a biblical view of who God is, there is nothing to distinguish us from other religions. Without a truth so rooted in the saving work of Christ and the redemption of humanity, we are simply a Build-A-Bear workshop. On the outside, we are different, and yet inside, we're all the same, filled with cotton and nothing more. Our culture offers youth so much variety in thought and content that they're unsure what they should choose, so they mix and match. Is no different than getting dressed. The risk that youth run into the faith is not that they're completely rejecting God. It's just that they prefer him to be a certain way. In Judges 17:6, it says, "In those days Israel had no king. All the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes." So what is right in our eyes today? Well, our postmodern world would tell us that truth is relative, and therefore what I see God as could be different than you, and that's okay. But this is not okay at all. You see, many youth out there want a God to fit the picture they have in their minds, not based on a biblical understanding, but based on feelings and personal desires. They want to worship comfortably rather than worship sacrificially.
Yeah. So we don't worship this way that's self-serving, and that's what personalized worship is. But let's push it a little deeper. That personalized religion cares more than about my comfort than godly priorities. And the question is this: we're asking ourselves this question: can I still be God-honoring in a way that's easier for me? That seems like a very normal question, right? Like it seems like a natural question. Is there a way that I can honor God and is yet easier for me? It's a natural question. And it's not a very spiritual question. What does Jesus invite you to in this relationship? Lay down your life, pick up your cross, and follow me. There's nothing about ease or comfort in Jesus' invitation. And we've mixed this around. Again, we've mixed our culture in with the gospel. The gospel is not come and follow and your life will be better. The gospel is come and lay down your life, give everything, and follow me and trust me that you can store up riches not in this world, but in the next world. But what we see in this story is that there's a group of people that are starting to say, can I worship in a way that is sacrificial in a way that I feel comfortable with, not in a way that God designed. Let's look at verse 10 in chapter 17. It's very interesting. So a Levite comes by, and Micah sees him, and Micah says to the Levite, the one who was set aside to offer worship on behalf of the people, "Stay with me. You can be a father and a priest to me. I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, plus a change of clothes and your food." What's Micah offering? Micah is saying, hey, Levite, who's supposed to be sustained by the gifts and the offerings that the people brought together, and God had apportioned a certain set of land for the Levites to live in, and they were to live off of the sacrifice of worship to the people that would have been brought from the community. And Micah is saying, you know what? I'm no longer going to give to the community. I'll give my finance in the way that I would like to the one that I would like to give. There are multiple things wrong going on here. The Levite should never have entertained this offer. The Levite was saying, I want to be sustained at a higher income level. He should never have been out looking, maybe there's a space where I could gain more income. Micah should never have made this offer. God designed that we would come and we would corporately give sacrificially as worship in the tabernacle, now in our context, to the church. If we go back to God's plan, it was that God intended that he would give us resource, and then 10% we would give from our first fruits back to the church for the purposes of caring for the place of worship, caring for the people, the needs, the salaries of those who lead us in worship, and caring for the needs of the poor and the community around us. But there's an issue here that's going on. I don't know if it's a mix, if it's the Levite's greed, if it's that there's been unfaithfulness, so the Levite hasn't been cared for and people have just been giving to wherever they would like to, or maybe it's a mix of both. But what both individuals in this story are representing, they're saying, I don't want to make the sacrifice God's asked me to make. I would like to do it in my own way. The Levite's demonstrating I want more. Micah's saying I want to control the kind of sacrifice that I'm making. You know, it's no different than the conversations we have today. We have all kinds of conversations about, should I be tithing? Should I be giving to the church? Can I trust the church? Oh, the church is just after my money. We have the same conversations. And the reason we have them is because we've broken trust with each other. And we say, I don't know if I can trust, or I don't know if things are being run ethically. Here's what I want to say. You know that the system is not broken? We're broken. The system is that God gives us resource and we steward it back as worship to the church to care for the place of worship, the people that lead us in worship, and the needs of the poor. And then that the Levites, the ones who are leading in worship, would not go after greed and would not want more and more and more. If we follow his design, it's a perfect plan for our lives. Yet when we step in our brokenness, we want to control that kind of sacrifice. And we're not legalistic as a church community about tithing. We're not checking bank accounts on the way in and paychecks and saying, is that 9%? Is that 10%? That's 11%. Well done. You get a free drink at the cafe. We're not doing that. It's your sacrifice of worship that God has intended for you and I, that I would give 10% and you would give 10% as the baseline of generosity, and then I would give more in my expression of worship. But here's the thing, we're deciding I'd like to control where I give and how I give to serve my purposes. And it's a slippery slope, because if you read the rest of this story, you get over to Judges 18, the Levite gets a better offer. Let's look at verses 18 and 19. When the priest saw the men carrying the sacred objects out of Micah's shrine, Micah said, what are you doing? And the people said, be quiet and come with us. Be a father and a priest to us. Isn't it better to be a priest for the entire tribe and clan of Israel than just for the household of one man? The tribe of Dan comes and says, you can come and lead us. We're going to give you more money and you're going to have more people to lead. Isn't that better? That's what happens when we try to take control of worship and sacrifice into our hands. Greed takes over and our money starts to become a power thing. God says, no, what is worship? It's a communal sacrifice that I've given parameters for, that I've asked you to do. And when we try to take control of it, we go down a very slippery slope.
Yeah. I believe youth, in the faith context are so enticed by this question. Is there a worship experience that is engaging to me? And I mean, they have the freedom to pick and choose. We made church so readily available in the last decade, and even more so after the pandemic. Church is at our fingertips, literally. We can watch it on our phones anytime, anywhere. And just as much as this is a blessing, it is also a huge responsibility. A responsibility that youth are not totally aware of. It's that it's being intentional about seeking Christ. With the ability to watch any church service and any worship experience, youth are chasing comfort rather than chasing God. Faith in church has become superficial in some aspects. It's trying to grab our attention, big programs, fun events, trendy sermons, cool music. A superficial faith produces a comfortable Christianity, one that does not interfere with one's predisposed lifestyle. It is a Christianity that requires no repentance, it exacts no restrictions, and asks for no sacrifices. We are afraid to delve deeper because we are afraid to hurt someone's feelings. We are afraid of stepping on someone's toes, of being corrected, of being held accountable. So we stay on the surface. This is the case for Micah. You see, he was chasing ways to make religion attractive. Big shrines, expensive idols, and personal priests. He had all the bells and whistles. And here's what he says in Judges 17:13. It says, I know the Lord will bless me now, Micah said, because I have a Levite serving as my priest. In other words, look at me, God. I have all the requirements. I meet the criteria. Surely you will bless me because I'm doing all the right things. In our modern age, we would say, as long as I'm at church, God will bless me. As long as I pray once a week, I should be good. You see, God is not looking for conformity. He is asking for commitment. We need to be a people committed to diving deeper into the Word, deeper into prayer, deeper into the purposes and the plans that God has for each and every one of us. It matters little that we have the equivalent of big shrines and personal priests. If there isn't a commitment to pursuing a relationship with God, if there isn't a commitment to seeing people come to Christ, being transformed and redeemed, if there isn't a commitment in allowing the Holy Spirit to work in and through us, then well-worded prayers and emotional worship matter little. As a people committed to Christ, we are to be presenting our culture with things that are uncomfortable. Truths regarding purity, relationships, media consumption, gender. So we can't afford to seek comfort. We can't afford to pick and choose what we like in the Bible because there are people out there, youth out there, who have been fed nothing but superficial content. The For You page is catered to grabbing their attention for seconds. And what they really need is the truth of Jesus, that he died and on the third day he rose again, conquered the grave, and gave his life so that we could find life. That is our godly priority, to disciple and be discipled, to encourage the new generation to seek a relationship rather than a religion.
Thanks, man. Good word. So we don't seek our own comfort. We don't seek something that's self-serving. What we do seek for is an intimate relationship with God, and that's our last thought. It's our landing thought, that personalized religion is rejecting that need for this one-on-one, intimate relationship with God. And this is probably the hardest part of the story to understand, is why Micah and his family and then the Danites, why they felt they needed to entice something outside of worship the way God intended for it. When the Danites come and they entice the Levite to go away, we're in chapter 18 now, verses 30 and 31. We can put this on the screen. Then they set up the carved image and they appointed Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Moses, as their priest. Again, this is against God's way. The family continued serving as priests for the tribe of Dan until the exile. We're talking hundreds of years. So Micah's carved image was worshiped by the tribe of Dan as long as the tabernacle remained at Shiloh. We don't have a map this week. We're going to show you a map next week when we get into some of the follow-up in this story. But Shiloh is about 20 kilometers from where this tribe is set up, this place of worship. 20 kilometers. God's presence in the tabernacle, a one-on-one, close, intimate relationship is 20 kilometers away, and they set up an idol. Now, how many of you would like to go for a 20-kilometer run with me after the service? We got 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, we're on, people. 115 out there. Well, okay, I ran 20 kilometers yesterday. It's difficult. It's a hard go, right? How far would you go for the one that you loved? Would you go 20 kilometers for a little walk? How far would you go to worship the creator of the universe who sustains your life, that wants a personalized relationship? How would you walk 20 kilometers for a sacrifice, to be in obedience, to be in community, to honor him? Would you do 20 kilometers? Would you give a day? I hope that all of us would. And the troubling thing about this is, first Micah, then the Danites went, 20 kilometers is a long way to go. I'm not going to have this intimate relationship with God. I'm going to settle for this kind of cheap experience of worshiping Jehovah through an idol that was first cursed and his coins that I made. And we read that this was a time when nobody was leading the people. You know, it's critical that you and I, we lead each other into a place that we will not settle for a sacrifice of worship that is anything less than what God has determined. It will do it in our music. We will do it in our prayer. We will do it in our giving. We will do it in our service. We will worship God in a sacrificial way that honors him and him alone.
Exactly. And as I mentioned before, during this summer, we established some bi-weekly small group discipleship nights where we invited our junior high and our senior high to discuss some of the things. I know Hannah was talking about the use of social media. Senior highs, we've been talking about habits, making a habit to spend time with God. And last week, we discussed making it a habit to worship. And our landing point was that worship was not a practice, but it was a lifestyle. And it was during our small group that one of our youth students brought up another crucial aspect of worship, and that is that true worship is sacrificial. Sacrifices are an essential part of worship. As far back as Cain and Abel, sacrifices have been a form of worship to God. In Genesis 2, God commanded Abraham to offer up Isaac as a burnt offering. In our modern understanding, although a sacrificial offering in its Old Testament context is no longer required of us, thanks to Jesus' saving work on the cross, what is required of us is the things that we hold dear in our hearts. We see this beautiful story in Luke 7, showing the sinful woman offering her perfume to wash the feet of Jesus. And her sacrifice, although monetary, was to lay down her pride and her fear and her shame. This is a woman who, with the weight of sin on her, did away with her fear, did away with her desires of wrongdoing, and in humility sought to seek forgiveness from the only one who could give it. In Luke 7:47, it says, I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven, so she has shown me much love. There was no grand showcase in this instance. All that was present was a demonstration of surrender. And sacrifice looks like submission to God as he renews our hearts and our minds, our whole life to better reflect his character. As followers of Christ, we are called to sacrifice our sinful nature, our active temptations, and our selfishness in an ongoing act of worship and praise to God, whose sacrifice alone makes us worthy to stand before him. And Psalm 24, 3-6 encapsulates this. It says, who may climb the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? Only those whose hands and hearts are pure, who do not worship idols and never tell lies. They will receive the Lord's blessing and have a right relationship with God, their Savior. Such people may seek you and worship in your presence, O God of Jacob. You see, at the core of our faith, there is relationship, a relationship with our Creator, with our Father. It's why Jesus, in response to the Pharisees asking him the two greatest commandments, he simply said, love God and love others. Our pursuit of Christ is a relationship and not a religion. We can't hope to religion people into believing in Jesus. Micah, in his pursuit of religion and self-interest, chose to focus on what he thought was right, on what he thought the people wanted to see and were attracted to. He personalized his way of worship, what he thought it should have been. And at the end, look what happened to him. Soldiers came, they stole his idols, stole his priest, and made their own religion. You see, a religion can always be replicated, but a relationship with Jesus, that is something that is personal and unique to each and every one of us.